So the element that would hopefully be a takeaway for our guests, whether they're Christian or an unbelieving people, would be just, of course, the element of joy. Christmas, of course, like you said, it's such an important time in the Christian's life because what we're celebrating is not a momentary event that occurs in history, but one that is rooted in eternity and it's not temporal, it's eternal. And so there ought to be the weight of the joy that comes along with that reality, that we're not just acting as though this is going to be a momentary high and we're trying to get as much from it as we can because it's passing. It's a joy that's rooted in the foundation of we actually get to celebrate this year after year after year, and knowing that this thing, that this supernatural breaking through into the natural world is our eternal reality, and it's the reason for our celebrations.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Feminine Glory podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Lydia Edmonds, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Esther Edmonds.
Hello, everyone.
And we have a very, very special guest on the podcast today to talk about a very special subject. So let's get right into it.
Okay, so on the podcast today, we have Melinda Brito. She is the wife of Pastor Yuri Brito and the mother of 5 wonderful children. They have been married for 23 years, and they have found it such a joy walking through life together. Melinda has a bachelor's in liberal arts and has loved serving her family and supporting her husband in his many callings. Most of all, though, she is grateful to be a daughter of the King and counts it a privilege to serve the Lord wherever he leads her. We are delighted to have her on the podcast today. So, Melinda, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me today.
We're delighted to have you.
So we are talking about Christmas on the podcast today, which is a very special subject for Christians in particular. So we'll open it up with a personal question about Christmas. When do you officially decorate for Christmas?
Okay, so I feel like all of my answers are going to be very roundabout. And our family actually begins preparing for Christmas by observing the season of Advent. So Advent is a season that begins the church calendar year. And it's really that time, like when the Old Testament, the Jewish people hadn't heard from, the Lord for that, 400 years, and they were sitting in darkness. And they were living in a period of anticipation, of hopeful expectation of the coming of the Messiah. And so we start our preparations by being intentional about observing that hopeful anticipation of what is to come of the Christmas season. So the thing that we don't have as a family a specific, we're going to start the day after Thanksgiving, which is very popular in the South here.
Yes.
Thanksgiving
for
is
sure.
Time to get into Christmas. The thing that we are intentional about is getting out our Advent wreath. So that is 4 Sundays before Christmas begins. And then that allows us to, go through the liturgy of having our Advent readings together as a family. Our family personally, because of just the way we celebrate Thanksgiving out of town and then travel commitments and that sort of thing, we are very kind of slow to get Christmas going. Which actually fits what we're doing. We kind of slowly pull it together. We'll pull out a tree. We actually do 2 trees, but we'll pull out a tree. And then a couple days later, we'll start putting ornaments on. Just happens as it can during that Advent season, which, as you know, because the world usually actually celebrates Christmas more before Christmas than when it actually comes. It is a busy time. Advent usually is a busy season.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Very much so.
Yeah. For sure. So if an unbeliever were to observe your family's Christmas, what is one thing that you hope they would take away from the way that you celebrate it?
So the element that would hopefully be a takeaway for our guests, whether they're Christian or an unbelieving people, would be just, of course, the element of joy. Mm-hmm. Christmas, of course, like you said, it's such an important time in the Christian's life because what we're celebrating is not a momentary event that occurs in history, but one that is rooted in eternity and it's not temporal, it's eternal. And so there ought to be the weight of the joy that comes along with that reality, that we're not acting as though this is going to be a momentary high and we're trying to get as much from it as we can because it's passing.
Right.
It's a joy that's rooted in the foundation of we actually get to celebrate this year after year after year, and knowing that this supernatural breaking through into the natural world is our eternal reality, and it's the reason for our celebration. So joy, for sure. I asked my kids about these, so it was interesting.
Oh, fun.
I know we had this.
That's great.
Yeah, it was great. And so it's interesting to hear my kids' answers. And some of them were brief, but I also thought they were also pretty important. We actually celebrate all 12 days of Christmas also. And so my daughter said, that all 12 days should be celebrated. Like that's a unique feature. And I think that because, again, we were talking about liturgies and calendars and observing a church calendar and creating rhythms based on the eternal truths and the things that we celebrate. I do think it's important that I think unbelievers would be surprised, like, wait, what? You don't just celebrate for a day and then take your tree down,
Yes.
No, we elongate the celebration until, of course, Epiphany. And the other is inclusivity. We've always celebrated Christmas, not just with our family. Actually, we celebrate Christmas with our church family more so we have over the years. So we're always going to have people in our home for Christmas, the Christmastide.
Oh, I love that.
That's so fun.
Yeah.
That's got to build such a wonderful like-mindedness. Yes. And if you're all participating in that together, that maybe they haven't been as intentional about celebrating Advent or whatever, you'd really just be sharing the joy and the like-mindedness to then, all right, let's go take ground in the new year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
I love that. So what would you say to someone who thinks that because unbelievers have taken Christmas as a holiday and made it all about Santa Claus and presents that we should not celebrate it?
Well, there's this quote attributed to Luther that says the abuse of a thing is not an argument against its proper use. And I think that can be applied in this situation. This was very interesting because, again, when my son answered and I was sharing this, he's like, well, it's okay that, pagans or unbelievers are celebrating. And of course they're going to celebrate in a way that errs. You know what I'm saying? Because they actually aren't celebrating the right reason, or they don't understand the reason for the celebration. So the celebration that they have is going to look different. And I think this goes back to the concept of like worshiping, right? We celebrate because we worship Christ, our King. And so that worship is focused or centered on his work in coming and taking on human flesh. And so unbelievers are worshipers too. They just don't know what to worship or how to worship rightly. And so the commercialization of the unbelievers should not affect our festivities, actually. It should actually cause us to double down in our celebrations and be the example or model of what the true celebration and why we are truly celebrating. We should be more intentional about demonstrating that truth. I think the danger in Christians taking on that, walking away from or giving over of our celebration to unbelievers because they don't do it rightly. The danger is that you're going to provoke your kids to jealousy, seeing what seems like festivity or celebration. You're going to cause them to have interest or desire that. And what you're causing is them to desire like scraps at pagans' tables instead of the feast that God has given us. And so you have to be really careful not to turn your kids into kids that want scraps instead of the real feast.
That's a very good point.
So do you think then for our mindset for Christmas and the way we celebrate it should be creating a winsomeness to where then even the unbelievers would then look at it and be like, well, we celebrate Christmas too, but not like that, and I want whatever that is, because they seem to be really feasting and having a true joy during the Christmas season?
Absolutely. I do think there's sort of a freneticism and a like get all you can because again, they don't see the eternal nature of what we're celebrating. And there is a way in which, yes, we celebrate that they should say, maybe they can't articulate what it is, but there should be something about it that makes them want to celebrate the way that we do. Yes. Yeah.
So there are a lot of phrases surrounding the Christmas season. So you have like season's greetings, happy holidays, etc. There used to be a time when many people, especially Christians, only said Merry Christmas. Do you think that we as Christians should be intentional about how we greet people during Christmas? Why or why not?
I absolutely do. Yeah, that was an easy lead into the yes, I do. I think intentionality in the Christian life is just really something that should be worked out. And so again, I think that when you say something like season's greetings or happy holidays, you're sort of blending these calendars, and it's creating a confusion about like, well, which one is the more substantive or important calendar? Like, because right, as Americans, we're like, Happy New Year, and like New Year starts on January 1st. But that's actually smack dab in the middle of Christmas tide, which is part of the church calendar, which is the substantive calendar. So yes, I do think that we should be intentional about saying Merry Christmas. And I'll throw one on you that that really gets weird looks. Yuri is very intentional both in our worship services and just outwardly in our public sphere, to try and sort of take back what is ours. And so even after Christmas Day, Christmas Day, and even the New Year, when we're out, he'll say to the clerk, Merry Christmas. They've already said, oh, Happy New Year. And he's like, well, Merry Christmas. And they're like, it's always kind of stumps them, like they don't know what to do with it. But I mean, that kind of intentionality and making someone pause, like, wait, and I think the idea that they're probably mad. Do they know what day it is? Like, we are well past that. But maybe one day someone will be like, wait, did you mean to say Merry Christmas?
Yeah.
Yes, I did.
I would have to borrow that. I love that.
Oh, yeah, that's so great.
Yeah.
So is there a characteristic of the Christmas season or a mindset during the Christmas season that Christians should carry with them the rest of the year?
Yes. I think the obvious one is hospitality. Right? And I think during the Christmas tide, the hospitality and the festivities, a large portion of that is carols and scripture readings, right? Like we do that in church, we do that, and I'm assuming you do that in your homes, the caroling. And so I think that those ideas that go along with that kind of hospitality or that kind of celebration would be the intentionality of singing the right seasonal songs and hymns during the right seasons, along with the right or intentional scripture passages that meet whatever season that you're in within the church calendar. Yeah, I do.
So if someone wanted to do that, are there any resources where they could go to find those if they didn't know where to begin on picking the right songs to sing for the season?
Oh, definitely. So any hymn book, I mean, I'm sure you guys know this, but for the broader audience, any hymn book actually has all of the titles and headings for which hymns belong in which season, actually, especially older Lutheran hymnals. And there's several, even if you look at, what's the one that the Wilson Jesus Christ Church.
The Cantus?
Yeah, the Cantus. Right. Even that one, if you look, there's headings. And so that's something that's interesting about our family. Now, we're definitely not Christmas songs before Thanksgiving, but I have one child that's like, ugh, Advent hymns during Advent, Christmas hymns during Christmas. I mean, it's a little bit, you don't have to be that legalistic about it. But because of the intentionality we've put behind it, like my kids will differentiate. Like that's an Advent hymn. O come, all you faithful. It's not a Christmas hymn. It's an Advent hymn, and that kind of thing. So, and I mean, probably the ministers in your congregation are intentionally singing Advent hymns during it. They probably are aware of this and are doing this without it being an obvious thing they're, saying to the public. And then during Christmas, singing the actual Christmas hymns. Yeah.
So you mentioned hospitality. What does that usually look like for your family during the Christmas season?
So like I said, on Christmas Day, we will, for years when my children were little, actually, we always celebrated with another family in our church.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, we were just good, close friends. And we do Thanksgiving with my family. That's my family gets together. And so that actually frees up all the church holidays to spend with my church people. And so I've liked that arrangement personally, and God has just worked that out in his good providence. But so we did that. And as my kids got older and their kids got older, we have since started inviting every year. We used to live across the street from this elderly couple, and we just affectionately call them, Grandma Bev and Papa Jack. And we're not related, but they get an invitation to our Christmas every year. Sometimes my parents join us, sometimes like on Christmas Day. But then throughout Christmas season, we will try to be intentional about whether we're having people in our home or we're doing things with people. Okay. That's what that looks like. Yeah, like come along, because we celebrate all 12 days, sometimes it might look like us, which we never do. Like in the past, we have chosen a day where we go to the theaters and watch a movie as a family. It's just really expensive when you have a large family.
Yes.
So for us, that's like a super treat. And usually around Christmas time, all these kids movies come out, right? So that's an activity we do to celebrate a day of Christmas often. And, we would just ask people if they want to come join us to watch this movie, or like, you know what I'm saying? Whatever we're doing, we're moving with people, or we might go out and, because we live in Florida and we can go to the beach for a day. Even if that's
great.
So
Nice.
like that, and just inviting others to join in on that kind of the activities. Mm-hmm.
So how do you think, like, carrying over that intentionality throughout the rest of the year would aid, like, in relationships and the overall atmosphere of a family?
Mm-hmm. So I think hospitality is a culture within a community that has to be cultivated, obviously, but it is actually, I believe, command for Christians to be hospitable people. And that requires intentionality and effort. And so whether you're learning to be hospitable for having people in your home, or you're learning how to be a good guest, like bringing something with you when you're invited over, not overstaying, maybe just reading the room, seeing how, like, what can I bring along? But our church, as a church community, practices really good hospitality actually throughout the year.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's
Even
sweet.
like, so for Easter, which is the next big set, there are several families who will just have 40 to 50 people, 4 or 5 families. We do it for Easter, other, like 4 or 5 other families. And so pretty much you have, like, our church is just together in big clumps celebrating Easter meal together. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
That is wonderful.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
That's so fun. So, speaking of feasting, Christmas time is a time for feasting and celebrating. With that in mind, what are some practical ways that we as women can help aid that time of celebrating and feasting with our families?
Okay. Yeah, so I asked my children this one too, and my son literally said, and I quote, "Make food ahead of time. Make good food." So I think, of course, there's an element of feasting where, you want an elevated feast. This is an extra special celebration. And so I think, though, that there was a good insight there when he said, make food ahead of time. If at all possible, there's that intentional element that I'm talking about, right? Mm-hmm. That you are thinking about and preparing for, which, again, the Advent season helps us to think about preparation, right? So that when Christmas arrives, everybody that's included, including the wife and the mother, the women in the home, can participate in that joyfully without the stress, without the, you know what I'm saying? Because oftentimes I think if you wait and you haven't prepared, you haven't made food ahead of time, you haven't created whatever it's going to look like and are working that out, then it becomes stressful, and it robs you of some of that joy of being together and enjoying these things. So another element, of course, is, women are beautifiers. We're made to make things beautiful, to glorify things. And so now I'm going to give a caveat because I don't want to, like, overwhelm people with the burden of, oh, my home has to look like it, it just came out of Southern Living magazine. No, based on, what season you're in, this is going to look very different. Like how much you are decorating, what your capacity is for, maybe, your kids are little and you're swamped. And so maybe you just get up a tree this year, but then you add to that a little bit. Maybe next year I'm going to buy a few candles, and also whatever you are financially able to do. Like usually the older your kids get and the older you're more financially stable to be able to be like, okay, I'm going to purchase this beautiful thing that is going to be a part of our celebration. But when your kids are little and there's a time issue, there's usually a money issue, like you do the best you can with what you have. And you don't have to feel burdened by, oh, okay, my home doesn't look like it belongs in a magazine. Quite frankly, it probably shouldn't look like that. But but yeah, there is an element in which, we want to celebrate with our eyes too, like the goodness of God. So there is an element of beautifying that should occur. Mm-hmm.
So what are some good staple foods in the Brito home for Christmas?
I knew this was coming. Like I said, these are the roundabout ways we get to answer. There isn't.
Okay, that's great.
And that's a very Southern thing too. Like we always have this or we always have that. So while my kids were little and we were celebrating with this other family for many, many years, like I didn't want turkey and not a lot of them liked ham. And so we all like steak and shrimp. So we did surf and turf, like at Christmas.
Oh, that's so fun.
Grilled steaks, and we did shrimp kebabs, and it was like a Florida Christmas. That is unusual, right? Like that's not right. But what I will say is, since we're all celebrating this together and it's, a community event, specifically from year to year, like what we're consuming or what dishes I've made change. So I'll just ask the kids, my husband and the kids, I'm like, okay, so what do we want for Christmas? What would you like to have? If you could choose one thing to have, either at the brunch, because we do a Christmas brunch and then we do Christmas dinner, what would you like? I mean, last year my husband was like, I want you to spatchcock a turkey. I was like, okay, that's easy. He's made the decision. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we're always, and that tends to be us too, like one Thanksgiving, and this is Thanksgiving, not Christmas, but this is just what I mean. Like, we're just going to make what we want. My husband loves chicken wings. Everybody thinks you should have turkey at Thanksgiving. And he was like, let's do chicken wings. And I was like, okay. Listen, it was everyone's favorite. Everyone was like, are you guys going to bring chicken wings again? We were like, oh, no. But so we just decide as a family what we would like to have, and then we make it happen. Yeah.
I love that. We do something similar for our family. Like, our mom goes around and she's like, hey, what's everyone kind of feeling for this year, for this meal? And that's super fun too. So then we call it cherry cheesecaking. There's a whole family side to it, but of basically the gist is making something that you always have thought was everyone's favorite, and you never really asked them if that was their favorite. And so then you're like, oh, well, if I had known you didn't like that, I would have been making it this whole time. So that's really fun to check in with everybody, because their taste buds do change and what they want changes.
Yes. I remember one thing I think should be at both Thanksgiving, just personally, because I want them, are deviled eggs. Like, I'm going to make that both for Thanksgiving, because that's the thing that should be out and I want it. But we have not done mac and cheese a lot, which is odd. Mm-hmm. But Ephraim, for his birthday, asked for me to make homemade mac and cheese. And I was like, okay. I mean, it's a birthday. We're going to do it. And now, I can see that my kids forever are going to be like, Mom, we want that homemade mac and cheese. That just came out of nowhere, but now it's on the menu, So
I love that. That's so fun.
Yeah.
So how would Christmas look different for a family that emphasizes table fellowship during the year versus a family that does not?
Okay, so I believe the way this question is being asked is, if your liturgy is already that your family has meals together, how does that look different than if your family does not have this liturgy already established, right?
Right.
Okay. I think that if your family already has a pattern of eating and feasting together, that family meals, like you've already made the effort, you've done the work of making sure that that's an important element in your family life, it severely reduces the stress surrounding Christmas, or really any season, but Christmas here in particular, when it comes to making that happen and then being able to elevate it, right? So you already actually have this basis from which you're working, and now you're just going to elevate it a little bit. So there's only a little bit of extra effort there. Mm-hmm. Sadly, families that don't have the routine or the pattern already established and built in their home, the idea of just getting everybody to the table together, I think, can feel so overwhelming. And so the stress that would be just from getting everybody there and then trying to make it something additionally special, I think it can be extremely overwhelming. And then whoever is trying to prepare that or do that just would be frenetic and probably stressed more than being able to walk in joy in that. It would seem more like a burden than a delight, I think. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, do you think that's why then, because as a culture, it's just kind of, we're so busy, we're not going to emphasize table fellowship. That's why then there's kind of you would see more families that are splitting as people get older and they're not coming back together and really enjoying a time of feasting together.
And in that too, right? If that's already the pattern, then you have learned how to be together well. Mm-hmm. You learn how to interact and enjoy each other and delight in one another's company. But if that hasn't been an element, then that's work too, right? Oh, I have to make conversation with my sister who I see once a year, which is such a sad reality.
It really is.
And then it becomes I don't want to have to go through that effort. What are we going to talk about? There's so many things that are off the table. about talking about anyway. We're all going to have to go and kind of be superficial and I mean, it's very sad. Yeah.
It is very sad.
Yeah. So how could somebody, if they haven't been practicing that table fellowship, begin to implement that into their family?
Yeah, I think just choose like one meal a day where you might have to have a family meeting and say, listen, I know this hasn't been the way, but I would really like to start this as a routine, like the mom and dad maybe. We're going to intentionally make this a thing. So whatever meal is most easily moved into that. I mean, maybe it's not dinner. Maybe the kids are a little bit older. And so this is what we're finding right now in our family. We just allowed our boys to play on their school soccer team. And so it pulls from dinner time a couple days a week, which to me this year, I looked at that and I thought, oh, I don't like that, But it was an easy transition to say, okay, then breakfast is going to be the meal where we're intentionally sitting down together. So I knew that my effort had to be getting up earlier or preparing ahead of time so that we can sit down and feast together in the morning without feeling harried before they're off to school. And so I think whatever meal you can make happen, pick it and just, there has to be intentionality on the part of the leadership in the home. Yeah.
Yep. And don't despise the day of small beginnings.
That's right. Excellent. Yes. Excellently said.
So we touched on joy already, but just to put an emphasis on it, one of the things that seems to be a theme with the Christmas season is joy. We have the pillow shams, the signs, the cards that all say joy, but I don't think that most people fundamentally understand why that is such an important virtue for Christians to have all of the time, but especially during the Christmas season. Therefore, could you give a brief overview of what is a true biblical definition of joy and why it is so important for Christians to emphasize that during this season as well as during the year?
Yes. So again, Advent being the season of expectation, the people were living in great darkness. And now at the coming of Jesus, they see that expectation met. They see the promise fulfilled. And when he comes onto the scene, literally the entire mood of the world shifts. You have this great eruption of rejoicing. You literally see psalms and hymns being sung in heaven by the angels and on earth by men. And so the season of Christmas is just like, it's cosmic in nature. That's the celebration. So that is why most of our hymns, of course, have the theme of like joy to the world, because literally this is joy coming into the world. And so I think that the definition of joy could be said something like, it's the unexpected interruption of into the natural of the supernatural. Right? So literally Jesus is the joy that came into the world. So that's how I would define that. And I think that's, if you're talking about how can we see that throughout all of the seasons and all of the year, I actually think you see that pattern again, because there's liturgies and, in Christ's life, we even see it again where he says, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame. And is now seated at the right hand of the Father, right? So the reason that he could, it talks about joy there in light of the suffering and the shame is because there was the anticipation or expectation of the supernatural interrupting the natural, right? Raising Jesus from the dead and then giving him the authority because of what he had accomplished through his sacrifice. Again, the same thing, like it's that hopeful anticipation of that supernatural interjection into the natural that really, we all might go through dark nights of the soul, and then the scripture talks about, David, the psalmist, right, talks about the dark nights of the soul and then joy in the morning. And it's because God makes himself known. God inserts himself into those situations after the period of suffering or darkness, and so that's the basis on which joy should be understood and then celebrated throughout the year, really. Yeah.
And that's when you're talking about that the joy that comes after. I don't know, it's just such like a wonderful experience, because even after dark times and all of that, and I don't know, it's just such a comforting thing that you can see, although that there are dark times, trials that come upon us, like God is still working and moving, and there's kind of light at the end of the tunnel, and not to lose hope in that. I think that's just such a comforting thing.
And it absolutely is. And that's why, like, when we talk about how Christians suffer, like suffering well as Christians, we can do that, whereas unbelievers usually can't, because we hold to these truths. We know the permanency of the promises of God. Yeah.
And we know that Christ has already walked through all of that for us.
That's right. Yep.
So what kind of mindset should Christians have as we are headed into the new year?
Well, this is again where I'm going to reiterate, heading into the new year, the Christmas tide already establishes the rhythms of the church year. And so heading into the new year, I think we just need to continue to understand that as believers, our calendars will be best observed if they are absorbed and or reflect the calendar of God. So that would mean that's why we as Christians move through the church calendar in the way that we are celebrating his life, his birth, his life, his work, his death, his resurrection and ascension, because it really covers the whole gamut of our existence. Because like you said, Esther, he's already walked through it for us. And so then we're just repeating the patterns that Christ has walked for us. So
yeah. And I think it does help carry over, or at least something I've noticed, like where, I think oftentimes in our culture, it's easy to kind of get caught up in the busyness of life, but it's almost like keeping that anchor in looking to Christ, and then also in the scriptures that holds throughout the whole year, that I think has been at least significant for me.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely. And I think, do you think understanding that there are different seasons, the seasons, you can see that even in our own lives or in the world in general. I don't know. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, on a more, I guess, fun note, lighthearted, what is your favorite Christmas song?
So currently the favorite amongst my household is While Shepherds Watched.
Okay.
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah, isn't it a great one?
Oh, yes.
I like that one a lot.
My personal favorite for several years is Of the Father's Love Begotten.
I don't know if I've heard that one.
I don't recall that I have.
It's really beautiful. Yeah.
We're going to look that one up.
Yeah, look that one up. It'll be under the Christmas tide or nativity in your home.
All right, so we touched on food a little bit earlier, but is there any sort of dessert that is like a staple for the Brito household during the holidays?
No.
No, okay.
There's not. Honestly, I am not that great at baking or desserts. That's not my forte. So usually if someone's coming and they say, hey, what can I bring? I say, would you like to bring a dessert? And we will happily eat whatever you bring.
Nice.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So moving on now to other topics besides Christmas, what has been the most challenging thing and the most rewarding thing about being a pastor's wife?
Okay. Can I give a little bit of background on this?
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
So I'm so grateful that God brought us to Providence Church 17 years ago. Yeah, 17 years we've been here.
Crazy.
And I grew up in a tradition that if you were going to be a pastor's wife, the expectation, unspoken but obvious expectation, was that you were going to be musically gifted and therefore become the pianist or be on the church music team. Or you were going to be heavily involved or in charge of women's or children's ministry. Okay. And when we were candidating here 17 years ago, the congregation, small as it was, made it very abundantly clear that the only expectations they had for me as a pastor's wife was that I was going to be a helpmeet to my husband and raise my children, which was what I'm biblically called to do. And there was such a freedom in that, and that truly did work itself out in that way. They had not had any expectations other than those things. So I was able to walk with other wives and mothers, and the challenges I faced were the same as other wives and mothers as we tried to navigate our calling well, and learning and growing together, bouncing ideas off each other. It was really wonderful. I will say, as my children have grown up and maybe needed me a little bit less, or I had the opportunity, and as the church has grown, to meet with women, it's not necessarily a challenging thing. It's just a sad thing, and I want to preface that it's not an epidemic in the church. But when I have spoken with some, ladies whose husbands weren't leading or loving them well, and just hearing them struggling with that lack of leadership or love, and seeing how it's affecting their family, that is something that's been just sad to see. And again, it's few and far between, but when it's present, that's hard, because you just want to shake them and be like, love and lead well, But that's not my place necessarily. I'm just walking with the wives who are having to deal with that and try to deal with it well. So on the flip side, I mean, that being the case, that actually has been a rewarding aspect. I love people. I love getting to know people. I love sharing in people's journeys. I think that has been one of the biggest blessings. That as a pastor's wife, I mean, more people do want to meet with me or feel comfortable sharing with me, I think, than they would maybe other women in the church. And I think maybe because there's that knowledge of confidentiality too. Like she knows that what I say to her, I mean, and I hope that they do know that, and that's probably anyway. So there is a sense in which I've gotten to hear both good and bad, but a lot of good too, just how God has worked in families' lives and people's lives and women's lives. Even, I mean, in Presbytery, we just got back from Presbytery hearing the story of how God has led men into the ministry and all of these things, seeing how God has created people to be, their bents, their interests, what they love reading, what they love cooking, just from any kind of topics, getting to know people. And I do think it's rewarding to have the practice of rejoicing with those that rejoice and weeping with those that weep. And so there's been a real blessing in just getting to know a lot of people. Another one, of course, is, like I said, hospitality. But I would say that any healthy church, that could and should be something that everybody is getting to experience. But like having people in our home and them really getting to know us and us being invited into their homes, that's just been such a joy. Yeah.
Do you think that hospitality, like having people into your homes, really does help foster a koinonia fellowship as opposed to if you didn't have someone in your home a lot?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Undoubtedly. It's just the idea of being known, of knowing and being known. I think we all want that, right? Obviously, ultimately we are known and we want to be known by our Heavenly Father. But, we have God our Father, but His bride is the church. And so, or we can look at it like parenting, right? Our children, we know our children, and our children want to be known by us. Mm-hmm. And so in the sense that the church is the bride of Christ, in some ways that's our mother, right? And so being known and knowing in that context it's invaluable. I think it's kind of foundational for the Christian life, honestly. I think we serve a Trinitarian God, right? Mm-hmm. And so there is relationship and fellowship even amongst the triune being, and that we are to model that out as we walk in His ways. That is part of who He is. That's part of it being. So, yeah, absolutely.
Amen.
So it is not uncommon with families that have older children that the fellowship of the family has broken down and the kids are no longer seeking the parents' advice, no longer wanting to stay at home, and are constantly arguing. Why do you think that is the case, and how would you encourage parents to build a solid relationship with their children?
Okay. Well, I would say that families that tend to end up that way are families who have not put in the work when their kids were little. I think that I'm going to borrow a little bit of Jordan Peterson wisdom, because it's actually, he steals and borrows from biblical wisdom. Parents should be striving to raise the kind of children that they want to be around. So,
yes.
If you are not intentional about training your children up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, which of course is your core foundational, being, or the thing that you are going to have in common, and then the outworking of that. What does that look like? What kind of person does that create? Being marked by the Father and a part of the community of faith, and we are to be conformed to His image. And so our children should, just like us, should be becoming holy as He is holy. And so if you're not dealing with your kids' sin and sinful habits, and honestly, just because we are a relational being, awkwardnesses, right? Kids should learn how to greet people. Kids should learn how to look people in the eye. And, those kinds of relational elements need to be trained, and discipline needs to occur when they're younger, so that you're creating the kind of person that you actually do want to be around, and that can be around other people well. Yeah. I think that Doug Wilson has this principle down really well, that you should do the hard work. My husband likes to say, when your kids are little, you should be a benevolent tyrant. and he's saying that kind of like tongue in cheek, but when your children are little, right, you keep the boundaries tight. You with joy and with delight, you let them know that the expectation is obedience and trust, right? You need to trust me by obeying me. And as you learn to trust and walk in obedience, then I can move the fence posts out and give you more freedoms and more, I can put more on your plate because you're the kind of person, you've become the kind of person that is trustworthy, that can be trusted with these things, that will make the wise choice, that will be able to handle this. And so as your kids get older, ultimately, if you do the work when they're young, you are pushing out those fence posts and allowing them more freedom. I think the opposite is what happens in a lot of Christian homes, where parents don't do the work when they're little, and then they see what their children are turning into, that they can't be trusted, that they don't obey, and then they try and like bring in the fence post and like create boundaries and make all these rules. And then they say, oh, my children are being rebellious. And it's, well, no, your children aren't being rebellious. You allowed them to live in a kind of way for so long, and then you didn't like what it became, and now you're trying to change. And you've come to this, and they're confused by that, you know? And so they don't understand why they don't get to make the choices. They don't get to dictate what happens in the home, you know, or what they do. And so I think that is usually a problem that has been created mostly by parents.
Yeah, that's definitely sad, because to me, I'm like, what's the verse about the loving your son? If you love him, you'll discipline him. And so it's just kind of, it's really sad to see the kids then grow up and become that way because boundaries weren't put on from the beginning.
Yeah. Well, everybody's going to thrive in the boundaries. I think even children learn to trust themselves as they obey. That's another way too. It's interesting, through obedience, that we get to experience the joy or the love of our Father, right? So I was thinking about this when I was thinking about this question, and I'm going to try not to be too ambiguous about this, but I was just working through this thought that God says, if you love me, obey my commandments. And then it's interesting because as we obey those commandments, we actually understand his love even better, because everything he's told us to do is actually for our good. So if our children also understand that principle, like, we should be telling them, I am for you, I love you more than you can imagine, and I don't have these rules because I'm against you or because I want to make your life hard. It's because I actually want good things for you. And so when we obey God, it just, you know, as a whole, like situationally, we can say, usually people who walk in the ways of the Lord seem to have better or easier lives, which is not true, right?
Right.
But looking at it from the world, they might be like, oh, you just had life so easy. No. Those were intentional choices to walk in obedience that have blessings attached with them. And God told us to walk in this way because he loves us, and he knew those blessings would flow from that. And so then if they're not trained to obey, they're not going to understand the love of their parents, because they don't get the opportunity to see, oh, right, that did turn out better for me. My parents do love me. You know what I mean? Have you guys ever had that where your parents told you to do something and maybe you didn't want to do it, but then you found out, oh, they were right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was better, right? And then it just reaffirms that your parents love you, right? Like, oh, they knew this was going to work out well for me or work out better. That's why they wanted me to do it this way, you know?
And something we actually were talking about recently was that even although, like, yes, we do have commands we are to follow, there's such freedom and joy.
Yes.
Like, it doesn't necessarily, I mean, unless I'm like walking in sin, it doesn't feel like I have to do this, I have to do this. It's like almost like a get to, not a got to. Like, no, I want to do it. Like, I love the standard, and there's so much freedom and love and joy within it.
Yes, and that's excellently said, yes. That you want them to love the standard because they understand where that comes from, you know? Yeah, absolutely. That's great.
So what would be some practical ways to train that in your children, that obedience that would be formative instead of corrective? Discipline.
So in the South, here's just one particular example. We love to make our children say yes, ma'am, and yes, sir. Like, we just see it as a respectful thing, you know? I had a friend one time tell me that I actually will make sure that I offer my children fun things and then require the yes, ma'am, too, so that they don't only associate that with getting in trouble. So, would you like to go get ice cream? Yeah! You know, like, yes, ma'am? Like, it actually is... No, we're just responding in respect, whether it's you're being disciplined in a negative way or there's something beautiful being given to you, which both are beautiful, but you know what I mean, fun or whatever. So I do think that on the positive side, like we would have like little training camps where when we saw that obedience was becoming an issue, like immediate obedience, Yuri would say, okay, come to me, right? The kids were little, like 2 or 3. And the kid would come and he'd be like, good job, high five, or kiss, or, okay, go hug your mom, run, hug mom. Okay, come back. Yes, sir. Run back. Gets, you know what I'm saying? Gets that favor or that benediction, that smile for every time they obey. And so if you're only, and you're just practicing, right? You're practicing obedience and then you're practicing receiving the reward or the blessing of obedience. I think when kids are little, you should do that. And then, again, just acknowledging, I think probably something for me personally is just remember to acknowledge, because I have very high expectations, but to say, I saw that obedience and I appreciate it. It didn't go unnoticed, like as parents noticing. And then even talking through, like making sure that you're always affirming, I'm telling you this because it's for your good. It's because I love you and I'm asking you to trust me. I've had those kinds of conversations with my daughter and my older son, more so because they're older, right? And being able to say, I want you to trust me, and then I'm going to explain the working out of this in a little bit, and as they see that, and then get the conversations, and it just affirms that the positive nature of that training, you know what I mean? Or that obedience.
And it develops a true friendship because then they do trust you.
Right.
So how would you encourage young women of a marriageable age to be strong, competent, astute, and firm in their biblical convictions such that when they are married, they are equipped and ready to raise the next generation?
Okay, this is an excellent question. I have a 17-year-old daughter.
Perfect.
I do think that this plays on part of what you're saying, helping them love the standard, helping them to know what they believe, which some of that is accomplished through, education. She attends Logos online, and so that's been really good. Okay. She's actually interacts with people who, have different positions on, I know these aren't primary, doctrinal issue necessarily, but baptism or eschatology or those kinds of things. And so bumping up against that, and then has created a lot of good discussions like, why do we believe this? Let me be able to articulate what it is I really believe. And then knowing that what you believe actually does play out in reality, right? The way you believe affects the way you live. And so helping her to understand, like, when you're in that realm of potential husbands, like, if they don't align with you theologically, there will be outworkings of that. And would you be okay with what that looks like worked out? So just helping her keep that in mind as she theologically, obviously continuing to increase in learning herself. You need to be reading good books or listening to good podcasts. This seems to be the generation that likes to listen to, which is great. Actually, I myself have benefited, hugely from being able to listen to podcasts, because sometimes you don't have the time to sit down and read the book.
Right.
But to be in the Word, like the habits of grace, reading the Word, being in prayer, practicing obedience through sanctification. Honestly, there's a lot of submission that is obedience. And so if your children know how to obey, if women, know how to obey their mother and father, and then they're going to be able to go into marriage. I really realized this recently, that if a young lady is an obedient daughter, then moving that into marriage, she's going to be a blessing to her husband, because after they've had the conversation and they maybe don't see eye to eye on how something should be worked out, but she's willing to submit, and sometimes that looks like obey, that is going to be so beneficial for them in their married life. You know what I mean? And then desiring, like you said, just continuing to love what is good. I do think there's an element of waiting well for a spouse. I don't think you can just sit around hoping God sends a person to you. I think, like we've had this conversation, our intention for her is for her to go to NSA for at least a couple of years and continue her education. And if she meets a man there, great. If not, she will come home probably, but she's not going to do nothing. I think that women should pursue interests that make them interesting and also give them skills that that perhaps God will use within their marriage or their family, something that will bless their life, their family life in the future. So whatever the skill is, to continue learning. Okay, so, or maybe you guys could give me examples. I know I did watch your podcast, like where you take care of chickens and talking about, like, that's a fun side gig that you could potentially turn into a side income. Our daughter plays the piano, and who knows the ways that could work as a blessing for her family, for the community, for hospitality. I mean, we know, but how seeing that played out in her life one day is exciting. So, yeah.
So why do you think there is a common misconception that if a woman isn't married, she should just kind of like sit and wait around? Where do you think that stemmed from?
I have to go back to, I don't know. I would say probably it's hard because you also want to protect your daughters. So like keeping them close enough that you feel like you could protect them. But I think that can be done even if your daughters don't live. Like, I still think I can protect my daughter if she's in Idaho. Do you know what I'm saying? I think if we have the right kind of relationship and I've actually seen it done well. I don't want to call out a name, but there was a young lady who came down and lived in Florida for about a year. And she was so respectful and ran everything through her dad. They had a great relationship. But she was here because, honestly, there wasn't anything working out for her up there. And I don't mean to say, you know what I mean, but like there weren't men that were interesting to her or men pursuing her that she wanted to. So I think she thought, I'm going to change my scenery and see. There's a lot of CRC communities or, faithful biblical communities out there. And also you get another experience, right? So you meet new people, you develop new habits. Like she got to experience, like going to the beach or being involved. She actually was very hospitable here. She would invite herself into homes, which I highly admired. That may seem like rude, but I was like, way to go. Like she'd be like, can I come over for dinner sometime this week? I was like, yes, you can. This day is good for us. And then she'd be like, what can I bring? And I'm like, well done. You see what I mean? So there's that waiting well. I think that people get comfortable sometimes and become a little bit lazy. But you shouldn't really be sitting back as a young lady, not pushing into learning new things and or blessing your community somehow. You should be looking for ways to serve and to continually utilize the gifts, including the time that God has given you within his body.
Yeah, I think that was very good. And I liked how you were wording that earlier. I thought that was very well put.
Yes.
All right, so this is moving on to some more fun personal questions. If you could have tea or coffee with any woman from history, who would it be and why?
Okay, well, ladies, I'm so sorry. It's not a woman. It's not a woman.
Hey, it's okay.
I am sorry. Honestly, I love my husband so dearly, but his dad passed away when he was 16. And so I have only ever known my husband but never got to meet his father. And I am so curious about, I've met his mom, and so I know the ways that my husband is like his mother, like what traits and what kind of way of being. I would love to have met his father, the man who helped create the man that I admire so much, and just see how they're like, how they're different, what was the foundational way in which their household operated or his dad operated. So honestly, I'd love to get a cup of coffee with Yuri's father.
That's so sweet.
That is very sweet. I love that.
Oh, man. Yeah, that would be neat. So another one would be, what is one trend that you just can't get behind and why? And this could be any trend. It could be a design trend, fashion. I don't know. Help me out if there's anything else. We've talked about writing trends.
Music trends.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh man, I think probably the one that sticks out, because maybe it was just really applicable when my kids were little, so maybe it's an old trend, but like the me time trend for moms.
Oh yeah.
I just need me time. Oof, that one doesn't hit right with me.
Yeah, that one's weird.
It's I think it's developed, at least like we were doing a little bit of research for another episode recently, and it's developed into like taking snacks into the bathroom and locking yourself in the bathroom for me time. I was like,
we heard that when we were like,
Okay.
we were both shy. We were like, wow, first of all, that's gross. And second of all, just why?
I'm not saying that sometimes as a mom you don't act in desperation so that you can I remember one time I was in my pantry and I was like, I just want a juice box too. Like I'm giving it to my kids all the time. I was like, but if I open one up in front of the kids, like I won't have any of it. This is what my life has become, sneaking juice boxes in my pantry. Like we're having a piece of chocolate once they're in bed because it's amazing. You open any wrapper and kids are like, "What? Mom, what are you eating? What are you drinking?"
yeah.
But yeah, it's just weird. I think. I can't imagine. And again, I'm not saying that you can't have some time. Like it's good. Honestly, it's good for husbands to take all the kids to the park. Mm-hmm. Usually, I don't think that looks like me time. I wouldn't call that me time for a mom. Usually then they're cleaning the house or going grocery shopping or doing something, but in an easier manner, right? Without the crew in tow. And that's not to say that you can't go enjoy, like I know some people get together with their sisters once a weekend a year or whatever. Like there's rhythms built into, and that I just wouldn't call, it's just that, like I just need to get away to be, so that I can feel refreshed and rejuvenated and, so I can then pour back into my kids. I was actually just talking with my sister and she was like, this oftentimes just makes it harder. Like if you step out of the hard work, it makes it harder to come back into it. It would almost be better.
Oh, I bet.
To keep going. And that's how I feel like actually stepping out and having your little, I don't know, whatever you think you want or need, maybe makes you sin more coming back into the work that you're called to do,
Yeah. When you have the Sabbath for that rejuvenation. So if you're practicing the Sabbath, it helps for sure with that. And it's a collective me time.
Yes. Or just a different rhythm of the day, right? The work looks different. It is. And so that's right. That's your me time.
So what is one of your favorite books that you revisit every couple of years?
Okay, here you go. I do not have one.
And that's fine too.
I do not have one. And I was like, all of these answers are just not okay. They don't fit so beautifully in this. What I will say is that I enjoy reading books. The problem is that I have a stack of so many that I want to read that are like waiting for me.
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Like, oh, I love that book, but also I'm sure I'm going to love this book and this book and this book. Right? So there isn't a book that I particularly come back to, but it does seem that I love how God sort of orients when you're reading a book. There seems to be whatever, it's like Yuri's going through Ecclesiastes, and I read this book recently, and it was about these 4 ladies that went on a journey, took a holiday for the month of April, and they were all actually trying to escape various relationships or elements of their life. They were like taking some me time. And my husband's preaching through Ecclesiastes, and it was just so interesting the way the principles and the themes that were in the book of Ecclesiastes, I could see them playing out, and then in the lives of these women, go both good and bad. Like, oh, see, this wrong narrative, this wrong way of thinking has led you to this point in your life and this broken kind of relationship, and so just seeing the healing in a lot of those too, and the idea about that healing happens within the context of community. It was kind of beautiful, just the way as I've read books and then whatever is being brought from the Word somehow seems to just gel so well with it. Books I have really, really loved. I love Jayber Crow. I don't know if you guys have read When We Buried. That was an excellent book. And it came just probably like Yuri read it like I was reading it with friends. Also, reading with friends is helpful. There's an Ida Elizabeth book that I read with a book club, and just part of the reason I loved it was because then the discussion we had, after reading it, and it was really good discussion. So that one just sits on me as having been really enjoyable. But I've read a lot of books, and I have a big stack of books still to read.
Yes,
same here.
That's me right now. And as we've interviewed all these wonderful ladies, I'm like, and they've recommended one, so it keeps getting bigger.
Oh yeah. Or even just like research or even fun reading. I'm just like, hey, I want that book. And then the stack just keeps growing. And I'm like, yeah, I'll get to it. I'll get to it eventually.
One day.
And it's so hard because sometimes you start a book and then you set it down and then you have to come back.
Yes.
I read that, started that. I got to reread those chapters.
Yes, exactly. Yep. And you're like, I might as well just start over because it was so long ago.
Exactly.
So, what is something that has stood out to you recently that has captured the essence of feminine glory?
Okay, this is a great question. I really do appreciate this. So I have one daughter and 4 sons. And so I had a friend recommend that I read George Gilder's Men in Marriage in conjunction with like Theophilus Lightheart's Glory of Man.
Okay.
One for the theology and one for the application. And so I started reading those because my 4 sons are kind of like, like 15, 13. They're at that age of manhood. And so then I started listening to the introductory and first podcast of Pastor Rich Lusk and Pastor Bill Smith with the podcast is called Collars and Calluses, and it's actually on biblical masculinity.
Okay.
So they made and I think that a lot of what they're saying kind of overlaps with what I was reading in these books, even just the initial chapters even. And but the thing that they said that I thought was very interesting is they're just kind of giving an introduction is that the most true form of masculinity cannot be had outside of the presence of a woman, right? Mm-hmm. And that's part of a created order, right? God saw man and saw that it wasn't good, like there was not a helpmeet suitable for him, and I think in that what they were saying is that there actually needed to be a woman for him to fulfill who he was supposed to be as a man, and so and what he was called to do and be. And so I think that the reverse is also true. Our feminine glory is most evident or most truly seen in relation to man, not separate from it. And, part of what they were saying is with this whole battle of the sexes, the feminist movement and all the different waves, and then this idea of the battle of the sexes and women and men being in opposition to each other, like we are at war, it's created the wrong narrative where women think that they can be women independent of men. They don't need men. They're just, but no, actually our glory is really evident in relation to man, specifically our husbands, right? Mm-hmm. But also in how men and women work together. We're not at odds with each other. We're made and created to work in tandem and in order with each other. So they bring something to the table, we bring something to the table. So the other way that this could be said, or what I think about it, Becca Merkel came down and did a talk, maybe like a year ago, and she was talking about, the idea of a man and a woman, husband and a wife, being on a trampoline. And when you jump on a trampoline with someone, it's like a lot of fun, and you can you can accentuate someone's bounce, right? Like you've been, how to actually, they're bouncing and how to work it in the right timing where you magnify, you double their bounce, right? You give them more elevation, more height, right? And then they with you, right? But you also know how to steal someone's bounce, right?
Yes.
You can time your landing on the trampoline or how you bounce so that it takes away from the height of the other person's, right? You guys have been on trampolines before, right? And I just have not forgotten that. I think that is a great idea or way of looking at feminine glory. Are we like magnifying or doubling our husband's capability, ability, the work he has been called to do? Are we in who we are being as wives or what the woman in his life, allowing him to do more, allowing him that work to be magnified. And anybody watching, or it doesn't draw away from a woman to be the one giving the bounce, because the person being bounced knows that the bounce is happening. That height, that achievement, that glory is coming because of the person doing the work to double that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You're not lacking in glory. There's a lot of gratitude, and then he can bounce you too. You know what I'm saying? but you're working together, and you're not working in opposition. We all do see, and I hope you haven't really, but as time goes on, you can also see wives who like steal their husband's bounce. You know, that is not good. You can see little examples of that. But we don't want to be the kind of women. We want to be feminine women who aren't stealing the bounce, that we're magnifying the bounce. And this is why I said the way women wait for marriage is important, because you want to become the kind of person that knows how to, and using your callings and your bents also supports and works with your husband to magnify the work of both of you, right?
Yeah. I think that's wonderful put, because that's definitely something, as we've grown up and been able to appreciate and watch how our mom does that for our dad, and how like the like in the example of hospitality. So obviously he's leading the home, it's his home, but then like how she beautifies in hospitality, it reflects upon him well. And so I think that's a beautiful dynamic, and I like how you worded that. It was very well put.
Yeah.
Or even like I think Sinclair Ferguson, he did a great talk on marriage, and he said they could do far more together for the kingdom than they ever could apart.
Absolutely.
And I think that has been a great reminder for me of like, just find the kind of person where it's like, like if we joined forces, it would be a potent work for the kingdom.
Absolutely. Yes, that's great. Well said.
Well, Miss Brito, thank you for joining us today.
Yes.
This has been fantastic.
Thank you for having me on and giving me this opportunity to talk with you. I really appreciate the work you ladies are doing. Keep it up.
Thank you very much. We have enjoyed it thoroughly.
Yes, we've enjoyed getting to meet so many faithful women like yourself.
Yes, for sure.
All right, everyone. Thank you for tuning into this episode, and we will see you on the next episode of the Feminine Glory Podcast.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Well, everyone, thank you for joining us in this episode of the Feminine Glory Podcast. This is the part of the podcast where we're supposed to tell you to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, or just subscribe to Apple Podcasts, but particularly YouTube. So there you go. You can smash those buttons, and
or you don't have to. If you find us boring, if you don't like us, you can just not do that and not visit this podcast again. It's up to you. Would you rather to listen or not to listen? To subscribe or not to subscribe?
That's the question.
Yep. So you can pick. We'll leave it open.
Yes.
You can subscribe. We like YouTube.
Yeah.
Because it hosts our podcast. So
and YouTube would like us to ask you to do this. So
there you go. We asked. So you can do that. Do that what you will.
We'll see you on the next one.
Oh yeah.
Maybe.
Who knows? All right. Bye. Guys.